To another episode of PB's No Cap Ultimate Guide series. Today on the channel, I'm going to try to succinctly and as quickly as possible tell you what nation to pick. Now, I'm going to preface this and say that if you're new or visiting or just curious in general, make sure you jump into our Discord channel, be a part of the community. They're a bunch of silly little children, and we love them all immensely. However, they do play the game quite a lot, so they actually do know a bit about the nations and all those questions that you are burning to ask me. Now, of course, I'll try and answer those questions in the comment section down below, but the reality is Discord is going to be your best friend if you're starting out in the Dynasty Scrolls realm. Of course, there will be links to full-length videos of each individual nation as well, which is Wu, Wei, Shu, and of course my favorite, Warlord. We do cover each of those in depth because those gracious little children gave me access to their accounts. Naughty, naughty. And of course, we had some fun and saw what the free-to-plays and the pay-to-wins can accomplish. Now, what I would say as you start out, realistically speaking, you can pick any nation that you want. I should preface that in saying there really is no amazing nation. They all have their pros and cons. And the reality is, it probably is going to work out to be whether or not you spend money or not. I know that sounds like most other games that you do play. However, there are certainly some advantages playing with a nation like Wei and a nation like Wu, which are these guys, opposed to playing with some more time intensive, money intensive nations such as Shu and Warlord. Now, in saying that, if you decide to invest any money in the game at all, of course, you're going to get some things that are a little bit more, I guess, niche, less accessible for the broader community, but be aware that the game is definitely changing towards the mythic era, so don't invest in legendary heroes if you are thinking of spending money. Now, in terms of time and energy, well, you're going to have to build them anyway, but I probably would draw the line of spending any money on the legendary heroes just because you're really going to get upset later on when you realize that they aren't used as much. Now, talking about the Wei Nation, Wei is a fantastic nation to start off with because of the high control bonus that the heroes give you. The big epic DPS that I would recommend playing is Zhao Dun. He does essentially a stun in the column, and he also does quite nice with burst damage. Another fan favorite probably is going to be Liao Zhang because he attacks the front row and reduces the enemy's rage. These guys are really just there to supplement your main DPSs, which are actually going to be some of the legendaries that I talked about that you will inevitably build. Now, the first legendary you're probably going to have access to is Dian Wei. You'll be getting him from shards and events and mini events and rebate items. You'll be able to build this guy relatively quickly. Once you unlock the wishing shop, you should be able to accumulate enough of his resources to build a full character within the first month as a free-to-play. But if you've been following any of my guides and my, I guess, I don't even know if they're guides anymore, just the general information. If you've been saving up your limited summons tokens, you should be able to start to pursue Dian Wei copies and, of course, Xiao Xiao copies. Now, the rule of thumb with these guys is you want to get them above 4-star, but 4-star is a fantastic beginning. Would you focus on getting all the legendaries up at once? I would probably recommend on working on 1 or 2, depending on your budget, because a 7-star epic is going to outshine most of the legendaries in their base forms all the way up to 3-star. Then they start to overtake the epics. Now, epics, of course, are the red ones. If you're curious, they're red, they're called epic. You can basically work around getting these ones. You'll get these shards from events and daily logins. You also get them from event raids and rebates and all this other stuff that essentially it's easier to build the epic heroes, than the legendary ones. So don't be afraid if you have a full team of epics before you start building legendaries. It is absolutely normal. However, as you progress into the mythic era, you'll start to notice that you will have access to a second rebate item, or should I say event, called limited hero summons. but it'll be specifically for these lovely ladies. Now, these are all the ones that you probably should start to focus on. I would recommend hoarding up the currency until you can get a guaranteed full copy, and of course, taking advantage of the Celestial. Is it? Celebrate, sorry, not the Celestial. Celebrate Festival, when the newest versions of these lovely ladies and gentlemen appear. Buy the shard forms for gold, save your gold. Basically, Wei is there to control, freeze, and then do some burst damage. Now, in a nutshell, Wu Nation, however, Wu's where it gets a little bit nastier. We can probably just start off with their mythic. She does some, she's pretty tanky. She essentially is a puppet lady and she heals herself. She also curses enemies. Is there, I mean, look, if you're really thinking of it from should I play and build these guys straight away, the short answer is you should work towards it. Honestly, though, you're probably going to find that you're going to get a lot more opportunities to build the legendaries to begin with. If you're going to build a legendary in this account, I strongly recommend doing Zhao Yu, mainly because of his ability to burn all the targets and he does additional damage and stun towards them. And another one probably is going to be Lu Shan. Now, I hear that his accuracy is really low, but he does inflict burn on everyone, and the Wu Nation is kind of a burning nation. In terms of their bursty DPS, Sun Shi is one of the ones that does a lot of damage in a weird attack box. I'll show you in a second. So this is his active ability, and he hits like 3 targets. He's pretty good. He's pretty bursty. Gunning is a stunning front row hero, so he's great for trials. He does have a good amount of stun chance. And of course, the bunny lady is your generic Gen 1. You'll be able to build her similar to Dian Wei, relatively easy early on. Moving on to, I guess, what I would classify as a spending-ish account to try to maximize these heroes. You're probably going to need to spend a bit of money on them, and that's of course going to be Warlord Nation and Shu. Now, I probably should say this though: Wu Nation will take you pretty much all the way through mid to late game. They do get phenomenally strong later on. However, you really do have to maximize the beasts and equipment for them to start to shine. You kind of want the Fire Kitty up front. Fire Kitty is going to be your best choice for Wu Nation. Essentially, you want to build Fire Kitty for every nation, but in particular, you want the burns from the Fire Kitty. And of course, Mechanical Bird, I think, also does burns, if I'm not mistaken. So you want to build that one as well. For Wei Nation, essentially, Karkadan and Fire Kitty are great. Obviously, if you can build a time hero, I should probably mention this, they do not always appear in the time events. There is a separate summoning event and currency required to build them. However, Tokugawa is a phenomenal column damage expert. He stuns, he bleeds, and basically he's definitely worthwhile getting if you can get him for the Wei Nation, mainly because they lack bursty DPS. I guess an honorable mention should also be Gao, who does a rage reduction, damage bonus reduction, AoE type attack. Now, in terms of versatility, will the Wei Nation get you further than the Wu Nation? Arguably, it will be easier because of the control abilities of Xiao Xiao. This guy here essentially freezes the enemy targets, Dian Wei stuns them, and then Zhao Dun does the DPS, whereas Wu is more based on continual damage buff to yourself, damage reduction to yourself, and of course, burning the enemies alive. And it is a very effective strategy, but these ones are very much free to play friendly. Yeah, you might have to pray a little bit to RNGesus, but free to play friendly, definitely up there. Now, Warlord is my favorite all-time account. Obviously, I love Lu Bu. He is amazing. However, you do need to nurture these heroes for them to overall, I guess, they're AoE. So, essentially speaking, you do need to improve upon and increase their just sustainability. That's the biggest thing for a lot of these nations is they lack burst. On this account, I would say Lu Bu, in particular for Warlord, is really the only bursty hero. By bursty, I mean something that can kill from round 1. would definitely be Lu Bu, and everything around Lu is essentially supporting him. Now, some of the other things to mention is Zhu Jiang. He's sort of like he's an AoE specialist. Now, he is interesting because he does do a little bit of a rage reduction. However, I wouldn't say he's necessarily always accurate, which again is a problem. Where I don't know. I don't know. Did I do myself a bishop building Zhu Zhang over say Zhao Shi, who does a very interesting back row transformation, which is very annoying to the targeted heroes that he hits. These are all some things that you probably need to start to really nut down and watch the older videos and ask lots of questions if you are going to build Warlord. It's not as simple as Wei and Wu, whereas they've got pretty generic set rotations. Well, this one is kind of RNG dependent. I would say it's a lot more RNG dependent than the other nations because you need to essentially silence them with Dao Chan and you need to get off the burst damage from Lu Bu. Now, he is an absolute god when it comes to raw DPS. However, if he isn't if he isn't maximized, then your team is going to sorely lack in the mid to late games. I noticed that even with a higher power level, I struggle in content where Away Nation, about 3 billion power level below me, can easily clear because we don't necessarily have the same level of control. Now, Dao Chan, of course, gives silences. She'll be your first generation hero that you'll be able to build. The rest of the ones that accompany it, sort of like Zhu, he does poison damage. He's great mid game. Late game sort of falls off. Early game, if you're talking from an epic perspective, Gonzun is fantastic. He does a column damage. He has high crit chance, very good burst. This guy stuns everyone. Should show. Yep. Front line stuns, very, very effective. Dank Stash does buffs. He's not, he's somebody you can slot in. He does attack buffs to your front row. The healer, of course, is Hao Tao. And I should mention that each nation has a healer. But essentially speaking, when you start building towards your epics for Warlord, Gonsun and this guy are probably the better two. And as you progress along, you definitely want to be focusing on Lu Bu first, followed by Dao Chan as a easy free-to-play option from the Wishing Shop. Now, moving on to the Shu Nation. This nation is probably one of the more intriguing nations that I've come across. It probably has the most potential to outshine other nations in terms of just raw power. It absolutely has some crushing DPS. However, you will need to spend quite a lot of money to get up there. At higher power levels, i.e., better equipment, more attack power, more HP, these guys can really, really shrek. Now, I do enjoy building this as a free to play semi light spender accounts that I've seen, mainly because even from a get go, heroes like Zhang Fei, which are the epic variety, they actually do some pretty decent damage. They actually have high crit chance, as well as the fact they attack in columns, which I notice a lot of nations actually don't have as much of. So, in terms of like just what these guys can do, even Zhao Yun, he does pretty decent damage. I'll give you a demo if I can. He also does column damage, which is quite nice because he actually has a chance to increase his own rage to continually chain actives. So, from a nation's perspective, this nation really is about chaining its active abilities. And of course, we can't not mention the evil duos. So, these guys do stuns, very much similar to a couple of the Wu Nation heroes that do front row stuns. However, this guy, he's a single target. I haven't really tested him out. Obviously, Janwei, I think he only does solo damage, if I'm not mistaken. He does do a rage and damage increase. If I was going to build him, I'd probably build Wei Yan, Zhao Un, and I would say Zhang Fei would be my main epics. If you are looking at it from a legendary perspective, that's where things sort of change. The biggest takeaway would definitely be Guan Yu. because he has an ability to basically become resistant to stun and silence. He also has a chance to recover 4 rage. He is the master of war and he does actually do some good damage as well. Quite frustrating, and he can chain his abilities together, which is sort of what this nation is about, is damage reduction and then essentially doing burst damage. Marchow is the first generation hero you'll be able to build, and he actually hits like a fucking truck, but he only hits one target, so that's the takeaway. In terms of all the other heroes, I'm not entirely sure whether or not you need to build HYY, but I do have a feeling that at later levels she is a worthy investment. The reason being is she actually has, if I look at it, she gives random allies 4 rage and damage bonus. So she actually gives 2 random allies at 7-star damage bonus and 4 rage, again working within the rage bonus. Now, in terms of their mythics, I do have to say some of their mythics are kind of scary. This little lady over here, she essentially does a twister, but then she summons a celestial beast to fight with her to do bonus damage. It's pretty cool, not gonna lie. I feel like she does a lot of bonus damage, and she also does damage debuffs as well. I have to admit, out of all the ones, I feel like she is definitely the best support. However, like I said, this is the sort of nation where you will need to invest quite a large amount of money to get your power really high. So, Warlord and Shu are sort of those nations you're going to have to spend a fair bit of money to really excel in. But once you reach that goal, you will probably be very, very happy with it. As a free to play, though, I would recommend going with Wei and then Wu Nation next. If you just want to be spicy somewhere in the middle, probably stick with Wu. You'll enjoy that quite a lot, figuring out the burn combinations. But Shu Nation, I can say, is probably one of the sleeping nations that definitely develop its flavor over time. If you agree with those comments, let me know in the comment down below. In terms of mythics, we are definitely within that era. We're all working towards doing our mythic beasts, combos, and charms. So be aware of that as well. Hopefully, that's giving you a little bit of a sneak peek into some of the pros and cons of the nations. Obviously, the game is meant to be enjoyed. If you don't want to spend money and you just want to play Warlord or you just want to play Shu, absolutely go ahead. If you are thinking about spending money, they're probably the 2 bigger nations that you'll probably get the best results from, in my opinion. I feel like Shu Nation is probably up there in terms of the amount of people that whale within it. Let's have a look at some of the strongest ones out there. So this guy actually did Wu, which is cool. So these are some of the global leaders. So he's done Wu. What about you? You did Warlord. You did Wu as well. Wu seems to be pretty popular. Wu as well. And you did Shu Nation. Very cool. You did Shu Nation and you went with Xiao Xiao as your main protagonist. So some of these guys, it's not like a clear, oh, one nation is just fucking amazing. Pretty much you can build them towards what you'd like to do. Obviously, Wei Nation is not up there, but by no means are Wei Nations bad. I believe you went with Wu as well. You did. So that's our server guy right there. Did Simon go with Wei Nation? You did go with Wei. I thought so. So you went with Wei Nation as well. So Dan Wei, rocking it. These are sort of some examples. So Xiao Xiao, obviously, keeping pretty consistent here. I would say Simi Yi, yeah, up there. What about, I think Miko is Warlord, if I remember correctly. So you went with Jia and, of course, Dao Chan, the princess. You're using Zhao Shi, very bold. Zhu Liang, of course, and everyone's fan favorite, Lu Bu. But as you can see, there is no real, oh, I need to build one nation and crush the world. It swings and roundabouts in this game, and if you ever at any point don't like it, I believe there is a function for replacing. I forget where it is, I've never had to use it. Where is the replace function? There it is. Ultimately, you can probably go ahead and start thinking if you can replace some heroes. I wonder if I can replace any of these. No, I do not want to replace you. I wonder though. I deployed you, so I can't technically do that. Yeah. So anyway, you can figure around and play around with the replace function if you want to swap out nations. Um, I probably have to do an ultimate guide video for that as well, just because it is something that will come up in the questions. But yeah, anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, if you've learned anything, if you've have any other questions about it, hit us up in Discord and comment section down below. But either way, I will catch you all in the next one.